Central Florida scientists battle citrus greening with genetic engineering. You're listening to The Wrap from Central Florida Public Media. I'm Brendan Byrne. At its peak in 2003, Florida was churning out about 80% of all citrus produced in the country. But now, the state produces less than 17%, according to the latest data available from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. One major culprit behind the plummeting numbers is citrus greening, a tree-killing bacterial disease spread by an invasive insect. Fourth-generation Volusia County farmer Steve Crump says the disease is decimating trees in the orange groves his ancestors first planted more than 80 years ago.
It's very discouraging because I know how to grow an orange tree, or at least I used to know how to grow an orange tree. I really don't anymore.
But now researchers at University of Florida's Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences are exploring ways for genetic engineering technology to help protect crops from disease like citrus greening, which currently has no cure. That's ahead on The Wrap, the big stories this week from Central Florida Public Media. But first, these headlines. The annual count of people experiencing unsheltered homelessness in Central Florida has more than doubled over the past year, according to the Homeless Services Network of Central Florida. Central Florida Public Media's housing and homelessness reporter Lillian Hernandez-Caraballo has the details.
The results of this year's point-in-time count are in, and the Homeless Services Network of Central Florida says they're tragic. The overall number, nearly 2,900 people on a single night, includes an annual increase of 105% in the unsheltered homeless population in the Orange, Osceola, and Seminole Tri-County area. Network volunteers counted 1,200 unsheltered people living in places like cars and tents or in the woods. CEO Martha R. says that, for the first time, over half of the homeless population 65 and older is living without shelter.
This is a tragedy for every single person having that experience. For the growing number of senior citizens, especially women who are becoming homeless for the first times in their lives, that is not just a tragedy, it is terrifying.
R says more resources are needed. Lillian Hernandez-Caraballo, Central Florida Public Media.
Lillian Hernandez-Caraballo is a Report for America Corps member. Disney plans to invest $17 billion into its Orlando area theme parks, opening up a new door for the tourism industry. Central Florida Public Media's Marian Summerall reports on the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District's vote this week in favor of Disney's expansion.
This vote shows Disney and Governor Ron DeSantis' hand-picked board working together after a contentious political and legal battle over the past couple of years. The deal allows Disney to spend $17 billion in the next 10 to 20 years on things like a fifth major theme park and 2 water parks. It enables the company to increase hotel rooms, restaurants, and commercial space. George Miliotis, the owner and operator of Wine Bar George in Disney Springs, says this deal secures a future for his family and other families that work for the Disney company.
When we see the $1 billion number in front of the investment that's on the table, we get very excited.
The Central Florida Tourism Oversight District will have its final vote on the agreement on June 12th. Marian Summerall, Central Florida Public Media.
The first astronauts to fly in Boeing's Starliner capsule have arrived at the International Space Station. NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams launched atop an Atlas V rocket from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station Wednesday. About 25 hours after launch, the duo docked with the station. Starliner's initial docking was delayed by about an hour due to an issue with the spacecraft's thrusters. Now safely at the station, the crew and spacecraft will remain there for about a week before returning to Earth. They'll spend about a week at the ISS before returning home. The mission is the final test in certifying the vehicle for future astronaut missions. These stories and more on our website. Visit cfpublic.org. As the country is getting older faster and living longer than ever before, intentional communities are looking to provide resources to a shifting demographic.
The idea to really create an affordable, safe, and dignifying place for our seniors to be able to age in place and experience community and be connected to the larger neighborhood was an important goal.
A look at one of those communities on our website, cfpublic.org. Worldwide, the price of oranges is skyrocketing. But as Florida's orange harvest season wraps up, data from the state's Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services show orange production is down more than 90% from the Sunshine State's peak in 2003. One major factor, a tree-killing disease with no cure called citrus greening. As Central Florida Public Media's environment reporter Molly Durig explains, researchers right here in our region are leading the search for solutions with genetic engineering technology.
Steve Crump is a fourth-generation Volusia County farmer. He says oranges were always his family's main crop ever since 1883, when Crump's ancestors resettled here in De Leon Springs from Illinois. But nowadays, Crump says his orange production is down 80% compared to 15 years ago. For that, he blames one thing in particular: citrus greening, a bacterial disease spread by the invasive Asian citrus psyllid insect. Most trees die a few years after being infected.
Everything that should work and used to work isn't working like it's supposed to.
So Crump is getting creative. He takes me inside the best citrus screening defense he's come up with so far, a 2.5-acre enclosed screenhouse he built about 4 years ago, complete with roof and roll-up door.
We're growing citrus inside to keep the insect out.
Crump says the citrus trees in here grow much larger than they ever could outside this greenhouse, which so far is keeping out the invasive citrus psyllid. Or at least it was.
This is unbelievably great way to grow trees until you have a hurricane, and then the roof splits and the sides blow in and the bugs come.
That's what Crump says happened in 2022 when Hurricanes Ian and Nicole tore through the area just a few weeks apart. Back then, Crump had to repair the damaged screenhouse. Once, then twice. Still, he says he didn't notice anything wrong with these screenhouse trees until earlier this year.
I saw citrus greening inside, and some of the trees are infected. So that was discouraging. It takes about 14 months for the disease to show up in the tree, so I guess it was on schedule.
At the University of Florida's Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences, or UF-IFAS, microbiology and cell science professor Nian Wang says his lab is the first in the world to develop citrus applications for the gene editing technology CRISPR.
It can speed up the process.
Wang says you can think of CRISPR as molecular scissors, which cut citrus plant chromosomes, trying to remove genes that make the plant vulnerable to citrus greening.
You want to make sure, you know what is responsible for the disease, right?
So far, Wang says his team's narrowed it down to 40 genes that could be causing citrus greening. With CRISPR, the tricky part is removing those genes without harming other good genes, like ones that help a tree yield good quality fruit.
I think we're getting close.
Wang says earlier this year, his team took more than 120 CRISPR trees out of the lab, planting them in Central Florida fields to test their resistance to citrus greening. Final results are still a ways off.
It is kind of a long, slow process of the disease development, right?
But Wang is optimistic. So far, he says all the CRISPR trees in the field are doing well, not showing any signs of citrus greening. He hopes to know more about their long-term resistance to the disease next year.
Where we're going to drive just a couple hundred yards to an orange grove.
Back at the De Leon Springs farm, Steve Crump shows me one of the groves where he says his family first started planting orange trees more than 80 years ago.
These orange trees used to live a long time.
But citrus greening decimated those original orange trees, and today the ones growing in their place are much younger. Crump says right now he needs to remove about half of all of his trees after citrus greening made them unproductive. Meanwhile, as scientists keep searching for a citrus greening solution with CRISPR, Crump just hopes they can pick up the pace.
It's very discouraging. I know how to grow an orange tree, or at least I used to know how to grow an orange tree. I really don't anymore.
Molly Durig, Central Florida Public Media.
That's it for The Wrap this week. This podcast is produced by Central Florida Public Media with assistance from News Director Latoya Dennis and Digital Director Ryan Ellison. Additional editing assistance this week from Joe Burns. I'm Brendan Byrne. This is The Wrap.